Welcome back to Euro Football Daily, and look, clubs do go through some rough patches, but today we'll be looking into 10 teams that have come back from the brink of extinction. Newport County. Back in the 1980s, if you were a Newport County supporter, you would have experienced the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, all within just 10 years. In the 1980-81 season, Newport featured in the European Cup Winners' Cup, and in the competition they came up against clubs from Norway and Germany, with KZ's Genoa FC beating and denying them a semi-final clash with Portuguese giants Benfica. The club then managed to reach their highest post-war finish, fourth in the third division, but it didn't get much better, as 5 years later they were relegated, bringing their 60-year run in the Football League to an end. It got even worse for County though, as in their first season in the conference, they went out of business due to debts of £330,000 and were expelled from the division for failing to fulfil their fixtures. The club was at rock bottom, but the thing is, once you reach the bottom, you can only go up, and that's what they've done. They were reformed in 1989 by 400 supporters, joining the Hellenic League, 4 divisions below the Football League. And after some hard graft and a 23-year absence from professional football, the Welsh club managed to gain promotion to League Two, where they've remained ever since. Middlesbrough. 1986 is a year Middlesbrough will always remember, as the club were almost wiped from the face of the earth. It's not quite as dramatic as it sounds, but at that time the Yorkshire-based team had just finalised their fate, suffering relegation to the third division. However, there were more severe problems going on at the club, with debts amounting to almost £2 million. Within the space of a month, the club had died and been brought back to life, but this time as Middlesbrough Football and Athletic Company 1986 Ltd. Now that is too many words. After surviving by the skin of their teeth, Middlesbrough drove on determined to put their past behind them. In the 1986-87 campaign, the side which had been relegated the season before finished second in the table, regaining a place in the second division. The following year, the club finished third, winning promotion to the first division by playoffs. They've since gone on to feature in the Premier League, win the League Cup, and finish runners-up in the UEFA Cup back in 2006. Not bad considering 20 years before, they'd just been reborn. Fiorentina. A key theme here has been money, and the situation in Italy is the same. Fiorentina are 2-time Serie A winners and were runners-up in the European Cup back in 1957. However, in 2002, they were essentially disbanded. After having just won the Coppa Italia and qualifying for the UEFA Cup, things were looking good for Viola. However, there was some underlying activity which proved fatal for the club. It turned out they were around €36 million in debt and were unable to pay any wages, resulting in their relegation at the end of the season. Due to their bankruptcy, they weren't allowed to join Serie B and were forced to begin as a new club in Italy's 4th tier. By the end of the campaign, the club were top of Serie C2, which would normally mean they were promoted to Serie C1. But due to the Catania case, they went straight to Serie B, and by 2004 were back in the top flight. From there, things have slowly improved, with several 4th place finishes in the league and 2 Champions League campaigns under their belt. Rangers. Oh, Rangers, a club which has given every single one of its supporters heartache through joyous and gloomy times. If you've ever spoken to a Gers fan, you would know they've won the Scottish title 54 times, the most by a single club. Their last title came in 2011 after winning it for the 3rd time in a row. However, next year was when things went. Craig White was a lifelong Rangers supporter and lived every fan's dream by purchasing his club. But it was later uncovered in a BBC documentary that White and a business partner had seemingly falsified documents at a past company to bring up the price of their shares, basically making him a con man. This eventually led to Rangers administration. The Scottish club were taken over by a new company called Sevco Scotland Ltd, later renamed the Rangers Football Club Ltd. They weren't accepted in the SPL and had to make do with playing football in the lowest division of Scottish football. Over the course of 4 years, Rangers won 3 promotions on their way back to the top. And since their return to the SPL, in 2016 the club finished 3rd and at the time of writing are 2nd place. For a club who have literally gone from the bottom to the top in just 5 years, that's not too bad. Portsmouth. In the mid-2000s, Portsmouth became an established Premier League mid-table club, even reaching the FA Cup final in 2008, beating Cardiff 1-0 to lift the trophy, and again in 2010, but finished runners-up to Chelsea. However, before that final against the Blues, Pompey fans had seen their club go into administration due to debts of £135 million. This automatically subjected the South Coast club to a 9-point penalty, leading to the club's relegation that year. After falling into administration again in 2012 and suffering another points deduction, Portsmouth found themselves in League One, and after a dire season, they dropped down another tier. 2014 was the year of change though. The club was finally owned by the supporters through the Pompey Supporters Trust and were able to declare themselves debt-free, and the following season saw them make it into a playoff spot, where they lost to Plymouth. The 2016-17 campaign was even better, as Portsmouth won the league, promoting them back to League One. Slowly but surely, the Southern club are making their way back up the divisions, and with their new American owners, it may not be too long until we see them back at the top. Chelsea. Chelsea nowadays are seen as a mega-rich football club who are ready to break records for the world's best players. But go back around 35 odd years and the club's future all came down to £1 British. During the early 80s, Chelsea were going through a turbulent period, with hooliganism, the sale of star players and the redevelopment of Stamford Bridge all playing a part in the Blues' downfall. And by 1982, the club was sold to Ken Bates for just £1 and all its debts. Luckily, Bates was able to steer the club back onto the right path, narrowly escaping relegation to the third division, and after acquiring Ruud Gullit as player manager in 1995, the club went on to win the FA Cup. The Bates era wasn't all good though, and towards the end of his reign, Chelsea were facing financial troubles again, until a Russian billionaire by the name of Roman Abramovich stepped in. Since then, the club has been at the top of the European game, going on to win the Premier League 5 times, the FA Cup 5 times, and the Champions League. Hearts. Our second and final Scottish club, Hearts, or as you damn may know them, Hearts of Midlothian, are hugely successful, and one of the few clubs out of the old firm to have won several titles. In 2011, the club had racked up debts of £25 million, and were forced to enter administration 2 years later. Hearts started the 2013-14 season with minus 15 points, and were unsurprisingly relegated. Things could have gotten a lot worse if it wasn't for the club supporters, who decided to make a change, creating a non-profit organisation called Foundation of Hearts to try and save their club from extinction. 8,000 fans then joined the foundation to help local businesswoman Anne Budge take over. They pledged to provide Hearts with £1.4 million a year for 2 seasons. And in 2015, as a thank you, the club wore shirts with the names of every single supporter who pledged over £120. Hearts have since stayed in Scotland's top division, finishing third on their debut campaign back and qualifying for the Europa League. FK Qarabag. You may now know FK Qarabag as that team Chelsea played in the Champions League. However, the Azerbaijani club have a history which may make you surprised to see why they are here today. During the late 80s and early 90s, football was a risk in Agdam, the town where Qarabag are from, as travelling, training and even matches all had the possibility of projectiles falling from the heavens due to the military conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. You wouldn't be blamed for thinking this was the end for Qarabag. However, it's the complete opposite. The club was attracting more fans than ever, with 15,000 people filling out a 10,000-seater stadium to watch them play. They became a symbol for the town, carrying on despite the situation they were in. However, in 1993, despite having just become champions of Azerbaijan, there was no party, as just 10 days earlier, the town had been taken over by military forces from the neighbouring nation, after 5 years of aerial bombings. Instead of celebrating, players returned to their homes to search for their families. The conflict between the two nations claimed 30,000 lives and left more than 1 million people without a home. However, FK Qarabag have risen from a tough period. Used as a political chess piece, the club has been injected with huge amounts of money from the state. They are currently top of their league, and although they crashed out of Europe's top competition in the groups, holding Atletico Madrid to a draw is a massive rise from their war-torn past. Manchester United. Manchester's greatest team has always been successful, winning major honours since 1908. However, 50 years later, United suffered their biggest disaster, which almost stopped the club in its tracks. On the way home from a victory against Red Star Belgrade in the European Cup, the team's aircraft crashed, claiming 23 lives, 8 of which were members of the incredible Busby Babes. Iconic manager Matt Busby was injured so badly he had to stay in hospital for over 2 months and was read his last rites twice. Many people believed the club would fold, but United still finished the season, although they did so with a bare squad, using players from their reserves and youth sides and even signing players on short-term contracts from non-league clubs. The next season, Busby resumed managerial duties and went on to build his second generation of babes, with the likes of George Best and Dennis Law breaking into the squad. Within the next 10 years, the Red Devils went on to win the First Division twice and the European Cup, with two of the players who were involved in the crash, Bobby Charlton and Bill Fawkes, in the lineup. Chapecoense. Chapecoense are a fairly new club, being established in 1973 and had won 10 honours before a fatal day in 2016. Whilst travelling for the second leg of the Sudamerica final in Colombia, the plane carrying the squad crashed due to a fuel shortage. Only 3 players survived the wreckage, with 71 of the 77 people on the flight losing their lives. The football world went into mourning, however the club refused to let this be their end. Even with other clubs offering to loan players for free and willing to submit a request to the Brazilian FA that would make Chape immune from relegation for 3 years, the club rejected this assistance, as they wanted to rebuild properly. Chape were awarded the Sudamerica for that year, but since then have gone on to shock the entire footballing world. In the 2017 Brazilian Serie A, the club qualified for the 2018 Copa Libertadores on the last day of the season, finishing 8th, just 1 year after losing an entire squad of players. Forza Chape. So that was our 10 clubs that have made the ultimate comeback. What did you guys think? And have we missed out on any? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this, why not check out Stat Wars? Hit me up on Instagram, hit me up on Twitter, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.